Have you ever stopped someone from doing something risky and felt like you were protecting them, only to later wonder if you actually held them back? Today, we are diving into the fine line between keeping someone safe and limiting their growth and potential. It's time to talk about risk aversion, why we fear it, and why positive risk taking is an essential part of development and well-being. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Able to Care podcast with your host, Andy Baker. And today we are talking about risk aversion. So risk aversion is a common thing that I come across both from parenting within the care sector and across different age groups as well. Risk aversion is something that all of us do at times, but risk aversion is that tendency to avoid situations where the outcome is potentially uncertain, often coming from a good place in an attempt to keep somebody safe. Whether it be in care, education, parenting, or adult care, we often default to a better safe than sorry, but sometimes actually this creates more harm than good. An example is, if you think about how children learn how to walk, part of that journey is falling and getting back up again. And when we look at and understanding the importance of something like that, in one, overcoming obstacles is a huge part of development, but it's also that builds mastery. That this isn't easy and yet I've overcome it and I keep managing to do it. True safety isn't about eliminating all risks. First off, there is no such thing as no risk, and life would be boring without any risk whatsoever. Some people would say that the only way to avoid absolute risk is to never leave the house or never leave your bed, but even staying in bed all day, every day would lead to risks and lead to medical problems and concerns. Nothing is risk-free. And think about every sport that you've ever come across that never played or enjoy watching. None of them are completely risk-free. In fact, there is lots of risks to them, but they are appropriately managed. So why is risk aversion such an important thing, or why do people do it? And what's the vulnerability and what's the impact of it? So if we're looking at the danger of overprotecting, well, one of the things is it's stunting that learning and development. If we shield people from failure or discomfort, we take away their opportunities to build genuine resilience. Also, building self-esteem. Self-esteem, as I often say, comes from mastery. It's not about feeling good. It's about doing good to feel good. It's about overcoming obstacles, about being better today than you were yesterday, about problem solving, about finding ways around things. All of these things build self-esteem. But if you think about how often, whether it be parents or caregivers, sometimes inhibit self-esteem building. Let me give you an example. This book around raising an optimistic child is all about building children's resilience to mental health issues through helping them to develop their self-esteem. But it gives an example of, let's say, you'd want your child to stop going behind the sofa, or they keep going behind the sofa. So you try and stop them. You tell them not to, but they keep doing it anyway. So you put some cushions or put something in the way to stop them from getting behind the sofa. But what happens is they figure out how to move it, or they figure out how to crawl over the top of it. And the instinct is, don't do that. That's naughty. But there should be an element of actually celebration of that, going, hey, how clever of you to figure that out? How clever of you to overcome that problem? So sometimes we actually take away some of the things that children naturally are doing to develop their abilities, their skills, their resilience that we take as naughty, but actually it's a really important part of their development. Now, we might say if it's something dangerous, then we may need to inhibit that and give them opportunities where it's safe to explore the challenges and risks. So, for instance, not letting children make mistakes when it comes to friendship means they'll never learn social problem solving. But I think for some of the parents and some caregivers, we want to control and keep our children safe from absolutely everything. But the problem is that actually leads them to more risk. If you think if I never let a child cross the road, for instance, or I only ever allow them to do it when I'm holding their hand, you know, if there's an age dependence on this. But one day when I'm not there anymore to hold their hand and they do have to cross the road on their own, well, suddenly they're at far more risk. So they've never done it before. How can they learn? So it's about allowing and managing the risk to an appropriate level to allow them to safely learn. If we're constantly sort of protecting from risk and not allowing individuals to risk assess for themselves, people who are never exposed to manageable risk often struggle with decision making and confidence later in life. Because making wrong mistakes and realizing that actually making a bad choice and that not killing me is actually helps me to learn that it's okay to take risks with choices. If I've been protected from making choices or constantly then told that I've made the wrong choice or I shouldn't have made that choice or things like that, that's not allowing me to build the confidence that it's okay to make wrong choices. Wrong choices just allow us to learn. We can make better choices tomorrow. One thing that sometimes we pick up on is we pick up on the behaviors of others around us. I've often referred to social learning and social conditioning being a huge part of development and learning processes. We tend to act like those around us. So sometimes when we are surrounded by people who are highly risk averse and highly anxious about certain situations, then what they're communicating to us is this isn't safe. This isn't okay. Even if the scenario is fine, and we recognize it's an irrational fear, for instance, but actually we're then still limiting. I give you a wonderful example of this, and this was a long time ago, but when my son was young. My partner at the time was very anxious, sometimes struggled. And I remember we were at the park one day and he was getting close to the river. Now, this is the river Witham, where I live. This particular area of the river has steps down to it. It's very, very shallow. It's not fast running water or anything like that. It's a very low risk area that he was getting close to the edge. Now, he was probably maybe 5, 6, something along those lines. Okay. He had swimming lessons. We'd made sure he'd had swimming lessons. We were both there and not far away, but she was getting really anxious about him going anywhere near the edge. Come away from the edge. Get away from there. What if you fall in? And I was kind of going, it's okay. He's fine. But she was going, what if he falls in? Then he'll get his feet wet. There was just this anxiety, and more than likely it was from things from her past and situations she'd been in, or how would people see if my child, falls in? Are other people going to judge me and things like that? But actually, it was, well, if he falls in, he'll learn a valuable lesson about not getting so close to the water. If he does fall in, he'll get a bit wet. He knows how to swim. We're here to save him so he won't drown. It's a risk, but it's an incredibly low risk. But anxiety then caused challenges from then on in, because then he was looking around going, is this dangerous? Is this nervous? But there was no need to be nervous in that situation. We've taken away his ability to naturally risk assess. It was an opportunity for him to learn safely how to stay dry, essentially. On the other end of the spectrum, when we've got individuals who experience vulnerabilities due to aging, for instance, sometimes there's an immediate risk and kind of what if they fall and what if they do this and they can't do this anymore and what if they get cold and what if they become ill? And the thing is that especially towards the end of our lives or as we're getting older, we may just want to be able to live and enjoy ourselves. We want to still be able to take risks because they're part of what makes us feel alive. There's an interesting adaptation to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for instance. So in Maslow's hierarchy, some of you will be familiar. It's one of the most famous psychological kind of principles. So at the bottom, we've got our basic needs. Then we've got safety and security. Then we've got relationships and social engagement. Then we've got self-esteem. And then we've got self-actualization, reaching our full potential. There is something that has been postulated that's missing from Maslow's hierarchy, and that is an opportunities to feel alive. And actually, opportunities to feel alive come from certain levels of risk. So if we look at the adrenaline junkie, for instance, the person who jumps out the plane, well, the person who jumps out the plane, where is that on Maslow's hierarchy? Because safety and security, that is not. But they're putting themselves in a dangerous situation, but they're doing it where they have autonomy, they have control over that risk. But it allows them to feel alive. It allows them to test the boundaries of what they're capable on. And this is the importance of stimulation and pushing ourselves to do something that is uncomfortable and sometimes a little bit scary. Some of you will be aware of what's called mental health first aid. And there's one of the awarding bodies that offers it has just said, or has now come out, that we should not be referring to stress as a good thing, that it's only either positive or negative pressure, that stress isn't a good thing. And they're wrong. They are completely wrong. There are studies that show that believing stress is a bad thing is way worse for you than no stress whatsoever. Stress can be really positive. Stress drives us to pay attention and focus and allows us to feel alive, to recognize our boundaries and push ourselves out of our comfort zone. And if we're not pushing ourselves out, there is no stepping outside your comfort zone without some stress of some description. If I'm going to a party and I'm nervous of going to the party because maybe I only know a couple of people there, so I then don't go because I want to stay safe and I don't want to experience any stress, well, going to that party is going to be stressful. Going to that party is going to create some anxiety. As long as I've got a framework around me to keep myself safe, what if that party is where I meet my future wife? Where at that party I find an opportunity I meet a business partner that is going to change my fortune, but I never take those opportunities or allow myself to experience anything new because I think that stress is a bad thing. This is a fundamental mistake. And I speak passionately about this, and I didn't realize I was going to say this on this particular podcast, but it's important to say, with all risk taking, we've got to remember the benefits, not just the costs of any risks that we perceive. Whether it be from the book Grandpa Wants to Skateboard by Tim Farmer, where he talks about an 80-year-old man who used to be a windsurfer, who wasn't able to jump in the sea anymore, but he still wanted to get that sensation. So they minimize the risk by helmet on, elbow pads, knee pads, and let's let him give it a go. But it brought him joy and happiness, and it's part of our overall well-being. Positive risk-taking is allowing opportunities for growth while minimizing unnecessary danger. Instead of how can I prevent risk, shift the mindset to how can I support risk in a way that builds confidence, where they can stay safe, but they can still experience and push the boundaries of what they were able to do before. When we're risk assessing, don't risk avoid, risk assess, and always balance the positive as well as the kind of actual danger itself. And what's a real danger versus just perceived discomfort as well. Support without rescuing. Help someone prepare for the challenges. You can't make a child can't be protected from making a mistake socially. We can't make a child have friends, but we can make sure they've always got a loving environment to come back to where they're always cared for and nurtured. We can't make a child never make mistakes, or we can't force a child to do it at school, but we can let them know that if they keep trying, they'll do better tomorrow than they did today. Let mistakes be learning experiences. Reflect and adjust rather than immediately preventing any future risks. And celebrate attempts, not just successes. Mistakes are stepping stones in learning, and encouraging the process rather than reward can be an incredibly rewarding outcome. One other wonderful example, and I'll have to research and find maybe where the study was, but there was a situation I read about years ago, which was a school in New Zealand that was having some work done in one particular area. And they had blocked the area off, as far as the building work's concerned, as piles of bricks and wood and stuff like that. And what would be the instinct for most schools, particularly in this country, would be, we must cordon it off, no children get in there, what if they get hurt? What was interesting is this school tried something different, and they let the kids go into that area and play. And what was interesting is that accidents didn't increase, they actually went down. Overall, over the year, they found that accidents decreased as a whole because kids were getting a chance to learn what was and wasn't dangerous in a way of play, in a way in an environment that they weren't particularly familiar with, but it was a case that they were still managing the risks. But because they were doing it more often and they were doing it in slightly different circumstances, they were getting better at it rather than worse at it. So that whole thing of letting them play wasn't increasing accidents, it was decreasing accidents. But not only did they find that allowing the kids to play in this area improved risk assessment, they actually found that the kids significantly improved in their studies, in their concentration, in their behavior inside the classroom, because they weren't constantly being constrained to never take risks, never stimulate, never do outside the norm, follow the rules all the time. They were allowing them kids to risk assess and work different muscles and get outside and play and get dirty and eat worms as we used to do as kids. I didn't eat worms as a kid, but you know what I mean. And allowing people to really experience life. And that was actually allowing those children to better focus and better work better and be more productive when they were then being forced to sit for long periods of time in a classroom. Now, I'll have to dig out that study and find, was it just one, or was it, double-blind tested and really scientifically validated? But I think it's a great example of what we should be looking at when it comes to managing risks. Let the kid climb a tree. Just make sure there's nothing they could hurt themselves on when they fall out of it. Make sure they can't go too high, but don't just take the tree away. Make sure they've got a climbing frame if you'd rather it was a little bit safer, but it's still an opportunity to climb. For residents, what if they fall? Okay, well, what can we do to minimize and reduce the risk of them falling? But you're going to force them to sit in one place every day, all day, and expect that to be a good quality of life and be a good death? Let them move, let them walk. Try and reduce the risk to a reasonable level as much as we possibly can through environmental adjustments, reasonable adjustments, support if necessary. But we can't hide people from risk all the time. Maybe you could share your thoughts. What are your opinions around risk and about the struggles of allowing people to take those risks? What do you think the benefits of risks? Do you think we go too far of protecting people from some of the risks in life? We are so adverse to anybody being hurt and anybody getting injured. But sometimes because of that overprotection, we become a little bit over the top. And we actually then cause problems around constraints and behavior and a lack of autonomy and a lack of self-confidence and self-esteem as a result of that, in my opinion. So avoiding all risk is impossible, but learning how to manage it is a skill for life. So whether in your work or life, who are you overprotecting? And what's one small positive risk that you could encourage of them today? If anything I've spoken about is useful or you connect with it, or you'd like to make a comment, or maybe you disagree with me, then please reach out, comment, like, and share. Otherwise, thank you very much. Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behavior that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behavior can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later, wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature, and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict, and respond, and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviors that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behavior. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience, and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviors in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities, or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation, and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.